I'm Eric from someplace in Alabama.
And I'm Gerry from someplace in Boston, and it's another Sunday podcast. Eric, how's the witness protection program going?
Oh, man. I've been everywhere.
Hey, that's a Johnny Cash song, I think, right? I've been everywhere.
It is. Yeah, it is. I was going to bust into song, but I thought probably better not, just for the listener's sake.
This is true. I mean, we have a guest on tonight. I don't want him cutting out a minute and 17 seconds into this, with your golden vocals over there.
Yeah.
But seriously, you are actually remote. So you're at the Shelby County Arts Council tonight for a big show, right?
Yeah, that's right. They've got a show tonight. Byron Thomas has his band coming in, and I was just there, kind of helping them set up and sound check a little bit. I'm going to be learning how to run sound tonight, so we'll see how that goes, but it's set up to start here in a little bit. It'll be, if anybody out there is interested, it'll be on YouTube. They're going to live stream it tonight, but it'll be on YouTube, and you can look it up. So, but I'm really excited.
And later this year, we hope to have some of the folks from the Shelby County Arts Council on. That would be exciting. Talk about everything that's going on down there. But on this episode, we have a special guest. And really excited to bring my friend Ryan Matthews on with us today to talk about a foundation that he has organized. Let me give you some details. Ryan Matthews currently serves as the executive director of the Susie Foundation, an organization which he founded following his mother's death to support families struggling with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. ALS. During his tenure as executive director, the Susie Foundation has raised over $400,000 to support families living with ALS in Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. In addition to designing and launching the agency's Flex Grant program, aimed at offsetting the financial burdens levied by an ALS diagnosis, Ryan also launched the Susie Foundation's ALS Youth Mentoring Initiative to help bring the power of one-to-one community-based youth mentoring to the lives of young caregivers impacted by a parent or a guardian's ALS diagnosis. Ryan was named to the Hartford Business Journal's 40 Under 40 list in 2016 and was inducted into the Woodland High School Hall of Fame in 2017. He was also named a hometown hero by the Hartford Courant and a Myra Craft Community MVP by the New England Patriots. Ryan graduated magna cum laude from the University of Connecticut in 2009 with a BA in History and Political Science, and received his MPA in Nonprofit Management from the University of Connecticut in 2016. Would you please welcome to the show my good friend, Ryan Matthews. Ryan, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Gerry. I'm just here just to hear you read my bio. So now that we have that out of the way, I think we can just bid each other adieu. It was great to be on.
We'll post all of the information in the description. Now, it's great to have you. Thank you for taking the time to join us.
Of course, it's awesome. It's, of course, another Sunday. We've turned over a new leaf to 2021, thank God. And I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about ALS, with the Susie Foundation, a little about Hope Loves Company, and, everything else that I have going on in my life these days. And, of course, it's good to catch up. We haven't, had a full catch-up session in a while, but it's awesome that we're doing it live on weird internet radio.
It is good. It's good to catch up. Hey, say hello to my co-host down there in Alabama in the Witness Protection Program tonight, Eric Cousins.
Eric, what's going on, my friend? I don't know where you are in the world, but I'm excited about it.
Oh, it's a little town right outside of Birmingham, like a blip on the map. So out here in the middle of nowhere. But how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing wonderful, and having spent at least 2 long weekends in Talladega, Alabama, I can say you're most likely in a very, very beautiful part of the country with far less snow than New England. So those are 2 very good things.
This is true, yeah. Not as much snow as y'all have up there.
Talladega, Alabama, too. I spent 2 long weekends down there as well. Of course, I was at the Talladega Super Speedway. Were you at a NASCAR race by any chance?
I was at a national conference for Habitat for Humanity, so very different than a speed race. But no, there was, all I remember from Talladega is a very small bar with cheap Coors Lights that had about 4 bowling lanes and camo wallpaper in the bathroom. So I was quite at home.
That's pretty much Alabama in a nutshell.
So let's talk about the Susie Foundation. But before we do that, I wanted to ask you. You created this foundation in memory of your mom, and so I wonder if you may want to talk about your mom a little bit and why you started the Susie Foundation.
Yeah, totally. So the origins of the Susie Foundation go back to November 6th, 2009, which is when I found out that my mom had been diagnosed with ALS, which off the top was pronounced so incredibly well by Gerry DeViller, crowd favorite that you're pronouncing hard scientific Latin words. Always great. And so at that time, I had just graduated from UConn. University of Connecticut, in May of the same year, and had packed my bags up and moved to New Orleans. So I'd done that for a couple of reasons. One is I fell in love with the Gulf Coast going down after Hurricane Katrina struck in 2005. So throughout my undergrad years at UConn, I had gone down to both Mississippi and Louisiana multiple times to help them rebuild. So I was in Biloxi for a little bit. I was in New Orleans. I was, in like Chalmette, Louisiana, and a few others. And so when I graduated, it was also the height of the Great Recession. So there weren't a lot of nonprofit jobs going around. So I just packed up at that point a 1997 Ford Escort with all of my worldly belongings and moved to the greatest city on the planet. And so, very shortly afterwards, I kind of left, and my mom was experiencing what we didn't know was ALS, but some early neurological issues. So she was dealing with this thing called drop foot. And so in her right foot, it would occasionally just give way. And I remember her describing it like it would just all of a sudden like go to sleep. Right. And so it was like, I was 21 years old. I cared a lot more about like Miller High Life at that point than I did about like, being there and, being a caregiver or whatever. Like I was just focused on, as most 21-year-olds are, on what they're doing. But on Friday, November 6th, which was about like a 72-degree perfect day in New Orleans, I was outside my apartment and just called home to check in. And my parents were like, "Hey, you probably should know this, but we got diagnosed with ALS this week." And it was a 7-minute phone call that it just completely changed my life. So very shortly afterwards, once I had Wikipedia'd, what ALS is, because I had no idea what it was when she was diagnosed. Once I had, spoken to friends and family, and most importantly, once I had gone home for Thanksgiving and realized how quickly my mom had deteriorated physically from when I had left over the summer. So she had gone from, like an able-bodied adult in June or July when I left to being, pretty much in a walker and barely able to stand up. And I, knowing what ALS is at that point, so I've just read articles about it, never experiencing it. It's a terminal illness that more or less slips your body into full body paralysis, right? So it starts with my mom, it started with the right foot. For some others, it starts with a hand, like a hand weakness or any other foot weakness. And the rarest of occasion, it can actually start with something that's akin to, say, dementia or Alzheimer's. But most patients, 90-95%, will start with what's called limb onset ALS, and that's happened to my mom. And so by the time the Saints were winning the Super Bowl in early 2010, I was already back in Connecticut taking care of my mom full time. And I did that for about the next 16 months. So with that, every single need that she had, from the time that she woke up in the morning to the time that, I kind of turned the keys over to my dad for the night shift, at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, I helped to take care of her and be sure that those needs were met. So I got really good at like hair coloring, out of the box from Walmart hair coloring. Got really good at like putting on blush and, doing the, I don't know, deal with the eyelash curlers and all that stuff. But I spent just almost an immeasurable amount of time with my mom every day, which was very much a blessing, and one thing that I'm very, both proud of and very happy that I did. But also I saw just how devastating ALS is, because unlike other illnesses, and this is, we're saying ALS, it's also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. It's also, I'm sure folks are familiar with the Ice Bucket Challenge. You got a lot of notoriety there. Or folks like Steve Gleason, former New Orleans Saint player, O.J. Brigance with the Ravens, obviously Pete Frates and Pat Quinn. Pete was a former Boston College baseball player, and Pat and him started the Ice Bucket Challenge. And obviously everyone knows Lou Gehrig. And so, with that, like it's other diseases or other things that you're afflicted by, they often come with at a minimum a shred of hope, right? If we're diagnosed with cancer, if we're diagnosed with, whatever other disease you want to choose, usually there's something that you can hold on to. It's a 10% chance, a 15% chance. We've caught it early. We can treat this. With ALS, it doesn't really matter right now. When you catch it, you're going to die from ALS or something related to ALS. And so, every day was not just a journey, physically through, doing chores and doing, personal care and being sure my mom enjoyed as enriching of a life as she could with ALS, but it was also a journey emotionally and spiritually. And oftentimes in those, especially emotional and spiritual moments, like anyone else in her position, my mom would ask, like, why me, right? Like what did I do wrong in my life? Because they're also the great mystery of ALS, at least insofar as it exists today, is we're not sure why it happens in most people. There's this thing called sporadic ALS that they oftentimes, unless you do genetic sequencing or something along those lines, and even if you do, they really don't know. We know that there's higher frequency in veterans. We know there's higher frequency in those that have experienced head trauma. We know there might be some environmental factors like heavy metal exposure and things of those lines that might lead to higher frequencies of it. But we still, when you get it, we still don't know why. And so, when oftentimes throughout the course of human history, when we don't know why, right, we answer it with the spiritual, right? And so when she would ask me why me, first of all, I was 21 years old, not capable of answering that question for myself or anyone, but also, no one knows. And so I would do my best to answer her, and I would say, you couldn't have done anything differently, or, God gives his toughest challenges to his strongest people, or, just stuff that was like, I felt a Band-Aid over what the truth she was really seeking. And so after she passed, I felt not only uniquely qualified, but also uniquely responsible to answer that question. Right. And to be sure that all of the pain and the suffering and the loss that she felt, it translated into something meaningful for other folks, that her struggle and her pain made that same journey easier for other people locally and then, across now the region of southern New England, so in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and in Connecticut. I was uniquely compelled by this because it's not just, ALS is not just like, oh, you get it and then, life kind of just flatlines for a while and then you pass away. It's this constant regression, right? So I can walk today, I can't walk tomorrow, right? I can bathe myself today, I can't bathe myself tomorrow. I can feed myself today, I cannot feed myself tomorrow. I can hug my husband today, I cannot hug my husband tomorrow. I can pick up my children today, I cannot pick up my children tomorrow. And at each of those steps down, at each of those regressions, you grieve, right? You grieve for the loss of ability, you grieve for what's coming. And you're faced with the most basic emotions of fears and anxiety and worry that we know as human beings. And so having not just grieved her once, but have grieved alongside her repeatedly for the better part of a year and a half, I couldn't just go back to regular life, right? I tried. After she passed away, I took a long road trip, went all the way out to, like Glacier National Park, and went out to the Dakotas and went to Utah and Nevada and saw some incredible things and drove down the Pacific Coast Highway and, did all the things I always wanted to do. And then I tried to just get a job at like a local university doing like community service stuff. And I don't know, it felt like I was ignoring a part of who I was. And so to very, I'll say eloquently, but also in a very long and very verbose fashion, answering your question, it started because I couldn't ignore it, right? I couldn't ignore ALS. I couldn't get away from it. And I wanted to be sure that I brought meaning and satisfaction to my mom's life, even though I couldn't do it when she was alive. And that was 2013. And we've been going strong ever since.
What's going on with the research on ALS, and is there any possibility of a cure at any time? Is there any research on that?
It's a really thoughtful question, and one that I only wish, Eric, that I had a better answer to. So right now, the state of ALS research. So first of all, let me just get out in front of this and just say, I'm not a scientist. All right. So not a doctor, not a scientist, not very familiar with genetic sequencing or whatever. So I'll say I can speak generally, and then also explain a little bit why the Susie Foundation has become focused on the things that we are. So is where research is at now is it's accelerating at a really great clip. So for instance, in 2017, the FDA approved the first ALS-related drug in 22 years. So my mom, when she was living with ALS between 2009 and 2011, she had this drug called Rulatech, which at that point extended life by 3 months. That was the option for her. It was to extend life by 3 months. There's this new drug called Radicava that's an injection therapy that folks can get that it has been mixed. It's probably better than Rulatech, but it's not a cure. It does, in some people, slow down symptoms and slow down progression. A little bit better than Rulatech did, but the ends are still the same. This year, and I believe the end of last year, but I think it was pretty significantly disrupted by the pandemic, there was the first platform trial with ALS. So instead of just studying one drug at one time, they're able to study upwards of 5 drugs within the same study to just, expedite and make the search for a cure a little bit more rapid. There's an organization out there called, it's a Brainstorm, but they have a drug called Neurone that has been shown to actually reverse symptoms. But those cases have been singular, and though very compelling, have not been easily duplicated, especially in phase 2 and phase 3 clinical trials. I believe they're in phase 3 right now. So where we're at in the state of ALS research is, I don't want to say the dark ages because we have a long damn way. And, because of the contributions of people like Pete Frates and Pat Quinn, that search has been greatly accelerated. And organizations like ALS TDI and IMALS and Les Turner out in Chicago, and Mass General in Boston, and ALS One in Boston, and organizations like that across the country have contributed enormous time, enormous resources to the fight for a cure. In my humble and very personal opinion, I think what we're going to find with ALS is what we have found with cancer, which is if you asked the researcher 100 years ago what cancer was all about, they would probably tell you it's one thing, right? Cancer is cancer is cancer is cancer. It's just we're going to treat it the same. And it probably, 150 years ago was we're just going to bleed you for the next 2 weeks, right? Or whatever they did back then. But with ALS, I do think that so we've established that there's a couple of genes that are responsible for familial ALS, which is ALS that's inherited obviously from a parent or a grandparent or someone in your bloodline. But there's also, most of the cases are just sporadic. So, for instance, guys like Steve Gleason, no family history of ALS. So, to put it blankly, you're just where the fuck did this come from? And so, there's a lot to be done around head trauma. There's a lot to be done around both physical and emotional trauma from our veterans who are coming home, because that's a population who sees a higher incidence of ALS. And there's a lot more that we have to learn. And so, for me, sorry, the Susie Foundation, there's typically two kinds of ALS organizations, right? The one who raise money and donate to science, and the ones who raise money and support families. And I'm happy to say, I think, and it's proven, the last couple of years just how meaningful the work has been for me to choose the latter. So at the Susie Foundation, after we launched, we, both from personal experience, because it cost us an enormous amount of money to keep my mom home and safe, between medical bills and medical supplies and wheelchair ramps and nutritional supplementation and clinic visits and handicap accessible vans and bathroom modifications, like wheel-in showers and like everything else that you need to live with ALS. It can be in excess of $200,000 a year. And that doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of also losing an income, right? Because you're fully disabled and can no longer work. So, happily since we launched, which is like, admittedly, just to put it in context, like this has all been on nights and weekends. So this is not my full-time job, which we may or may not get into, but that's a little tease for the audience. All right. So maybe we'll do like a message break right here. No, but so when, like, knowing how expensive ALS is, we launched this Flex Grant program. And so we've run over 50 fundraisers in the years running up to 2020. We closed 2020 having raised close to $560,000 since we started, and nights and weekends, and chiefly contributed a lot of that to our Flex Grant program, which allows families to apply for grants with minimal amounts of information. They need to verify that they were diagnosed with ALS and provide a little bit of background on what item or service or supply the money is going to. They provide a receipt, and then we just cut checks directly to them for an upwards of $1,000. And this year we approved everyone who applied. So we gave away 82 grants this past year, which was over $50,000 in direct support. And that's just because it's like, the research is super important, but until there is a cure, organizations like the Susie Foundation still need to help out because families have needs today. And appreciating that all too well from personal experience about why we chose to go that route.
You have a number of volunteers that have joined in your organization. Talk a little bit about some of the things you actually physically do. You actually, in addition to providing the funding, the grants, you actually go to people's homes, build ramps, things like that?
100%. So on any given day, there's between 40 and 60 people who are volunteering for the Susie Foundation, contributing, in upwards of about 800 hours of community service every single year, which is incredible. And we had we had a holiday party not too long ago, and just seeing how these people were not, affected personally. Many of them were not affected personally by ALS, and just how meaningful the work has become to them because they have met so many folks who are directly impacted by it, which is wonderful. But chiefly, those activities are, helping us raise the funds to do the work that we do, and we also have a kind of small hands-on volunteer kind of service project program, and so we do build ramps. So we typically collaborate. There's an organization out of Ridgefield, Connecticut, called Spirit Builders. And they supply the know-how and typically the raw materials, and we supply the volunteers, and we build handicap accessible ramps that are floating, so that when and if they're no longer needed, we can actually take them apart and then bring those same raw materials to a new family who might be in need. But one thing that we're really excited about and kind of working on in the future is, so this year alone, and my numbers might be a little bit off here, but ballparking it, we had about 48% of our total funding go to patients who are younger than the age of 55. We also had 36% of our funding go to families with dependent children. And so that population for us, and it kind of ties into my full-time gig too, that population for us has become particularly of interest, because typically with ALS families, in families that are requiring of caregiving and family caregiving, we typically as a society and as a culture focus on the patient in the direct family, like the spouse, the brother, the sister, the adults. Right. Meanwhile, these half humans are running around, right, and they're also growing up in an environment that's can be, if not appropriately resourced, incredibly traumatic. And so just a few nights ago, I was talking with a young woman who is, now 16 years old, a daughter of the Commonwealth, Gerry, from Massachusetts, who is going through an experience where her parents were separating related to behaviors directly linked to ALS. And so being able to obviously coach that young woman through that is incredibly valuable and brings a lot of meaning to my own pain and my own experience and my own trauma. But it speaks to the fact that these kids need support. And so a couple of years ago, we started working with this group out of New Jersey that's called Hope Loves Company, founded by a good friend and a role model, Jody O'Donnell Ames, who, if you do not know that name, I recommend that you Google because she's incredible. She lost her husband, Kevin, to ALS in the late 90s and raised her children kind of right alongside with ALS. And then, later in life started this program that runs, year-round summer camp programming across the country, from Georgia to California to Indiana to Texas to, Massachusetts to New Jersey to Chicago, everywhere else. So I got personally involved in them as a volunteer, and we're sort of collaborating on that mentoring project that you mentioned off the top to hopefully bring a consistent one-to-one role model into the lives of these kids who are day in and day out providing caregiving services to their parent while watching them die, right? And so, for us, we think that with any challenge in life, there are silver linings. And even with ALS, those that can, pull resiliency in life lessons and everything else that they can from ALS can be better served by that experience in the long run. But if those ends are not achieved, you can be simply devastated. And so for me personally, right, the Susie Foundation was a part of how I healed. And so bringing a similar experience not only to volunteer mentors, but also to kids who are seeking to find meaning behind this very challenging and at times very hopeless feeling experience is one of our goals going forward. So we're excited to explore that opportunity further in 2021. I know this past year, we did 6 virtual camps. So I spent, 6 weekends over the summer and fall running virtual camp programming for kids across the country. So we were doing like Cahoots, and we were doing group shares, and we were doing yoga in our basement but it was all stuff that brought kids together around, who all share this exact same experience, which is, impacted by this devastating disease. So as much as I'm proud of the work that we've done, I'm equally excited for what's ahead for the Susie Foundation and what we're able to bring to families who are impacted by ALS across the country.
We're talking to Ryan Matthews, the founder and executive director of the Susie Foundation. So much going on, Ryan, and again, nights and weekends, it doesn't seem possible. I mean, you do have a full-time job with the Nutmeg Big Brother Big Sister organization down in Hartford. So I don't know where you find the time to do all this. And just looking at your website and, following you for the years that I've been since this inception pretty much, you do a ton of events, everything from golf tournaments to pub crawls, a lot of fun type events. How has most of 2020 with the pandemic affected those events? Have you found new ways to do old things, and what's in store for 2021?
That's a very great question, a very thoughtful question. So this year, believe it or not, and this is very, in direct result of the work of countless people who really dug in their heels and said that this year was not going to be as bad as it looked like it was going to be in March. So if you had asked me that same question in the middle of March, I was thinking that we weren't going to raise, $10,000. I was like, if we do anything this year, it's going to be amazing. I think anything at this point is gravy. And then March became May, and we raised $25,000 doing virtual trivia nights, virtual yoga, and a virtual road race. And then June came, and we ran a buy one, donate one mask sale that contributed 115 face masks to families in need. Then June became September, and we had 2 golf tournaments that collectively raised $85,000. Then September became October. We had another virtual road race and an outdoor kind of beer garden type festival at a farm in Bethlehem, Connecticut that raised an additional, $15,000 or $17,000. And then we went into sort of year-end appeal season. And, at the end of it, we raised, about 8 or 9% more than we did in 2019. And so we had literally our best year financially that we've ever had. And that's amazing. And it's, I think that all of us throughout 2020 and, thank God that year is over. I think a lot of us were searching for ways to give back. I mean, those of us who were fortunate enough to keep our employment, or at least near where we used to be employed, those of us who, are in the direct line of fire in a hospital or in a school. And those of us who were just like, man, like, I'm just like, I don't know, like I kind of order DoorDash and like I eat my pizza on Friday nights and like I kind of miss my dad, but like outside of that, it's like not like people like that were searching, for meaning and able to give back and impact other people's lives. And, I think the Susie Foundation definitely benefited, from that impulse. And everyone who donated this year and everyone who contributed to all those donations, we're just so grateful for. I mean, and especially just like, thank God for golf, right? Like, especially like for our fundraising this year, like thank Christ that like golf didn't get like, it was like one of the great escapes from COVID this year. So I think that going forward, of course, I know listeners are all over the country. So first and foremost, if anything spoke to you tonight and you want to contribute to our work, we're at the SusieFoundation.org. It's SUSIE, the SusieFoundation.org. All social channels except for TikTok, because I don't know how that works and teenagers scare me. I'm kidding. And only slightly. Listen, I don't know how to dance. That's kind of why I'm not on TikTok. And then, going forward, especially if you're in New England, we will get our events calendar together by January or February, but we're definitely going to have 2 golf tournaments in September. We're definitely going to have a beer festival in and around October. It'll most likely be somewhere in Western Connecticut. And, if this year proved nothing else, we can be really creative. So if you follow us on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, subscribe to our website, we'll come up with virtual trivia nights. We'll do a whole virtual 5Ks, all that fun stuff that you can get involved in no matter where you are. But yeah, just the fact that you're listening to me discuss what is just an unbelievably important part of my life means a lot. And obviously, any of your time, talent, or treasure that you want to share with our work, we would be more than happy to accept it. But yeah, those are some things that are, and we're also, we're going to need mentors at some point. So, stay tuned. So if you've been similarly impacted by, something like ALS, or know what it's like to lose a parent young, or have a soft spot in your heart for a kid that is going through that, we'd love to hear from you. So the SusieFoundation.org. You can email me directly at ryan.matthews@thesusiefoundation.org. It's ryan.matthews with 2 T's. And just, reach out, find us. We'd love to hear from you.
We'll put the Ryan's email and his website in the description of this show. So just an incredible organization, and again, a very busy guy.
Yes. And I think if Gerry, if I could be so bold, can I share just one more thing? So I think that and this is when like Erich gives me like the cutoff. He's just like, just as you've already spoken for enough, we don't want to do any more editing. But no, I wanted to share, I think that sometimes when you listen to podcasts like this, or sometimes when you hear, stories like mine, the immediate reaction is like, oh my God, how did he, accomplish so much or whatever. Maybe I'm pumping my own tires a little bit. But if you are having those reactions, first of all, Rome wasn't built in a day. And secondly, I don't, it's not like I knew what I was doing when I thought this organization. I just knew something had to be done. I wanted to scratch that itch, right? Just like you guys, when you started a podcast, you saw an opportunity, you wanted to scratch that itch and see what was in front of you. And I think that oftentimes when we think about volunteer work or we think about service, we think that we need to be like Superman or Superwoman or Wonder Woman or, Spider-Man or whatever. We need to be like, oh no, in order to help other people, I got to have my own shit figured out first, and I got to have all the answers. And that's just not true. Like, we don't need Superman and Superwoman. We just need a country and a world that pays a little more attention to people around them and that actually reaches out to serve them in a more, a more effective and proactive way. So if anyone is listening, if there's anything that you have ever wanted to do in your life, whether it's mentor a third grader or help the homeless or like just support a soup kitchen or whatever the case might is, take that step and do it. You don't need to know everything, and leading with your heart is going to get you a very long way, because I never thought we would have raised $500,000 to support, patients and families. I never would have thought that even this had the potential to become a full-time job. But both of those things are now true. And so, for me, I just hope that, if anything, your listeners take away just the fact that if you want to start something, just start something. And it does not have to be perfect. It does not have to be fully formed. But if you have that impulse, our world needs you now more than ever before. And if more people start to reach out and more people take initiative, we're going to be in a lot better place where it's less fear and less anger and less frustration and more about the pursuit of happiness, right? And that's what this country is all about. That's what our lives are all about. And so hopefully at the very least, you don't walk away, from this podcast, or hopefully you've kept listening, because God bless you for still having this on at this point. But because I just keep talking, but just take that next step, get involved, and really a lot of good things can come from it.
So the last question that we always ask our guests is, do you have anything to add?
Do you really want to open up that can of worms? Jesus Christ.
I think we covered it all.
Yeah, I really don't. Beyond saying that, I love what y'all are doing. I think that having a space that is as because usually with like podcasts and stuff, it's like so narrow, right? And it's like, oh, we talk about like the economy or like whatever, but like you're bringing, or like sports or some nonsense, but like having such varied guests and inviting like complete like psychopaths like me on here, I think that what you're really describing is like the tapestry of what makes our life so great and so interesting and so fun. And so I really applaud you guys for doing this podcast. I can't wait to see where it goes. I can't wait to be an avid subscriber on all places that you can find this podcast. I don't want to name names because I don't want to say the wrong thing. But honestly, I'm very excited. I applaud you guys for what you're doing, and I'm just honored to be a part of it.
Thanks for taking the time. In the description, we're going to put the email address for Ryan as well as his organization website. Please check it out. Take a look at what's going on. There's a lot of great information out there. Google the Susie Foundation. It's amazing what they have done. Ryan, I love you. Thank you so much for joining us. Any final words?
Yes, we are honored to have you on the show. Thank you for all the work that you do with the Susie Foundation to help those who are impacted by ALS. And may God bless you and your family and your work in this new year of 2021.
Thank you so much, boys. I love you both very much, and thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Eric, last word to you.
Roll with the changes.
It's Another Sunday Podcast is produced by Erich and Gerry. Music composed and performed by Tom Blaze. Check out Tom Blaze's YouTube channel at Tom Blaze. Technical advisor, Tom Bilodeau. Thanks to our guest tonight, Ryan Matthews of the Susie Foundation. Check out his website at thesusiefoundation.org. Another Sunday Podcast. Thanks for listening.